One of the other early considerations you're going to have to think about with your label design is working with color. And although you obviously could do a black and white label if you thought that was the best solution for this project, the vast majority of you are going to want to work with color. So I want to talk a little bit about basic color theory here. The first thing to understand about color is color does not exist without light. And if you think about it, in the dead of the night or in a darkened room, if you don't have any light, you can't see what color anything is. And what you have to understand is light, the visible light that we recognize, the kind of traditional rainbow colors that we know, are actually just a very small wedge on the entire spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that is always swirling around us. So at the top here, you can see the entire spectrum of the electromagnetic radiation. On one end, you have AM radio, shortwave. There you can see where all your cell phones live, FM radio. And then as you get towards the center here, you'll see the very narrow little wedge, and that's the visible light spectrum, and that's where the traditional rainbow that we're familiar with lives. And if you continue to the other end, then you get into ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. But for now, we're going to talk about pigment, or we're going to talk about color and light. The one thing as a graphic designer you have to understand is we work in two very different color spaces. One is referred to as the additive color space. One is referred to as the subtractive color space. In the additive color space, you are painting with light, and where that you'll encounter that anything where color is being projected at you as light. So your computer monitor, your laptop monitor, your phone, your television, your flat screen, anything where color is being projected at you as at light is referred to as the additive color space. And in that color space, the three primary colors, the colors you cannot make by mixing other colors, are red, green, and blue, which are oftentimes just abbreviated RGB. In the subtractive color space, this is the world of pigment and physical color, if you think printer inks. And in the subtractive color space, the three primary colors are yellow, red, and blue. These are the three colors you cannot mix, or you cannot get by mixing other colors together, and I'll talk more about that. Now, this is the biggest problem for designers because you're designing on a computer that is emitting the color at you as light, but oftentimes, especially in packaging design, you're physically printing this out with pigment and inks, and oftentimes you're going to see kind of a mismatch in the color because they don't exactly line up together. So just showing a little more depth, the additive color space. Again, if you were to look at any monitor, a TV or a computer monitor, or even your phone with a magnifying glass, you would see that all the pixels are made up of red, green, and blue pixels. And how they mix together is how you get all the other colors in there. So this is going to be, like I mentioned, your laptop, your desktop monitors, your phones, any digital device where the color is being projected at you as light. In subtractive color, it's different. And the way it works, with this example up here, the light that you see all around you that I mentioned is in the color spectrum, that narrow band of rainbow color that in our case comes from the sun. The way it works out in the world, take the leaf here for the example. So you have the entire spectrum of light going through, hitting the leaf. It will pass through the chlorophyll on the leaf, and the light will bounce back. And what happens is the chlorophyll will absorb all the other colors except the yellow green color that you see. And that's what gets reflected to your eye, and that's what you visually see. Same thing works when we print anything out. The light, it doesn't matter whether it's natural sunlight or artificial light, it's going to pass through the inks on the printed surface. It's going to hit the surface of the paper. It's going to bounce back through the pigment or the ink, and those inks are going to absorb all the colors that you're not going to see, and the only thing that's going to reach your eye are the colors that you printed out. When we're talking about the kind of rainbow colors, the spectrum colors, the six main colors, we refer to those as hues, are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet or purple if you prefer. Some other terms to understand about color is achromatic. That means without color, so that's only blacks, whites, or grays. Monochromatic, which I'll talk more about in a second, refers to everything having a single hue, although there might be variations of lightness or darkness in there. And then polychromatic, that means poly means many, consisting of many hues, so think in terms of the rainbow. So speaking again, and when we talk about design, and especially for packaging, we're really going to be focusing on kind of the pigment base color space here, because this will make it a little easier for you when you choose colors. As I mentioned, in this subtractive pigment-based color space, the three primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. You cannot mix those three colors by combining other colors together. Those are the three pure colors. Now, if you mix those three together, if I combine red and blue, I'll get violet or purple. If I do red and yellow, I'll get orange. If I do blue and yellow, I'll get green. These are referred to as the secondary colors. So when you combine the primary and secondary colors, you start to build the kind of traditional color wheel that we're all familiar with. So here you can see the 6 colors, both primary and secondary. Now, in between all those colors are what we refer to as the intervals, or sometimes these are referred to as tertiary colors. So that's where you get into like the yellow-orange or the yellow-green or maybe a red-violet. So these are the interval colors. And then when you combine them all together, that's where you get the classic color wheel that we use quite a bit in design. Now, understanding the color wheel can help you choose colors in your label design here. First thing to understand is on the color wheel, a little over half all the colors in here have a little bit of red in them. So you can see it's a little over half the color wheel. Because they all have red in them, all of these colors will work well together. So if you're unsure of whether colors work well together, keep in mind what colors they have in common. Same's true of the other 2 primaries. Well, here's some packaging using the kind of all the colors with a little bit of red in them. Same's true of the other 2 primaries. So a little over half the color wheel has yellow in it. So all these colors would work well together as well. Here you can see examples of that in some label design. Same too is true of blue. So again, over half the color wheel has a little bit of blue in it, so all those colors would easily work well together. Then we've talked up till now just about the pure hue, the pure solid color, but when you start adding white or you start adding black to a color, what you start creating are tints if you add white, and shades if you add black to it. So if you look in this classic color wheel, the pure hue is actually here kind of in the middle. As you move further out and add white to it, these are considered tints. As you add black and start moving into the center where it gets darker and darker, those are considered shades. So this breaks down that color wheel a little bit better. You can see the pure hues in the center, and then it gets darker towards the center, lighter towards the exterior on there. So in choosing colors, you don't just choose hues, you might want to consider choosing tints or shades of various hues. So here's kind of pastel colors. These are all tints of solid hue colors. I mentioned earlier monochromatic color, a color space where you have all one color, but it's various lightness or darkness or tints of shades. So if you take one wedge of the color wheel, in this case blue, and see what it looks like with only the lights and darks, that would be considered a monochromatic color space. So that might be something you consider for your packaging design. Here's a label design, all done in one color, but it's done in dark, light and dark shades of the same color. This is another color space. We call this analogous. And essentially what it is if you choose any color on the color wheel and then choose the neighbors on either side, those 3 neighbors or more neighbors would work well together. So this would be a good, could be a possible color palette for you to use in your packaging design. Here's some examples of analogous color palettes in packaging. More examples here again. So you can see the orange, red, and yellow. Tints and shades of all 3 of them used in this one package design. Now on the color wheel, if you choose a color and then choose the color directly opposite it, those are referred to as complementary colors. So blue here you can see is the complement of orange, which means green would be the complement of red, yellow would be the complement of violet or purple on here. One thing to be aware of if you are using complementary colors, it's a weird glitch in us as humans, but if you put full strength complementary colors side by side, so I have up here at the top full strength blue and full strength orange, full strength red and full strength green. If you stare at them for a second, it's going to start making your eyes vibrate, especially if you stare at the red and the green one. It's actually kind of a little painful if you stare at it after a while. You don't obviously want your consumer or your reader to get a headache while they're looking at your design. So if you do choose to use complementary colors, a good trick is to choose the full strength of one of the colors, and then for the other color, either choose a tint or a shade. So here you can see I've got the full strength blue, but to avoid that vibration, I've gone with a tint of the orange. Or if I go with the full strength orange, I've gone with a shade of the blue. You can see I've done the same thing over here with the red and the green. That being said, you can use complementary color palettes in your packaging design as long as you're aware of that vibration issue that does crop up. Here, and when you first look at this, you wouldn't realize that this is a complementary color scheme, but it really is, because that really pale oatmeal color is really just a tint of orange, and orange, the complement of that is blue. So there you can see there's a lot of different ways you can work these colors with tints and shades. Packaging design using that complementary, here you have full strength red with more of a lighter shade of green. This is a very common color combination as well. It's called a split complementary, where you choose one color on the color wheel, and then instead of choosing its direct opposite, its complement, you choose the neighbors on either side. And one of the advantages of using the split complementary color palette is you never really have to worry about that vibration issue that crops up when you're using full strength complementary colors. Again, here are the three primary colors. Now you can see them with tints and shades added. This can also be used as a color palette for label and package design as well. So kind of nice label design done that way. Same can be done with the secondary colors of violet, purple, or orange and green. More examples of packaging done with those colors. And then just a few things to keep in mind. As I mentioned when we talked about type, there's a lot of visual cues or shortcuts we use with consumers and viewers. And I mentioned those working with certain fonts, but the same is true of colors, and especially in packaging design. Some of these are obvious. If you're doing a packaging for a hot sauce or something, choosing some of these warmer colors, which I'll talk more about in the next lecture. Red means heat. If you're doing something that's natural or organic, green would be a really natural color to go to. So here are some of the 6 hue colors, pure hue colors, some of the emotional meanings attached to it, some of the cultural meanings attached to it, which you should also be aware of too, especially if you're designing packaging that goes across borders or cultures, and then some of the categories you oftentimes see using these colors. So that's a brief intro to working with color for your label design.